Today, the Church celebrates Saint Joseph the Worker. This feast was added to the liturgical calendar in 1955 by Pope Pius XII with the intention of elevating the dignity of work beyond the secular ideas of it, especially because during this time, the time of Pope Pius XII, the communism and socialism was becoming very prominent forms of government in many of the countries around the world. And this day was actually not just chosen randomly, but the communist leaders had established May 1st as International Workers' Day. So the Pope decided to place this feast on the same day to kind of counteract the communist movement. The Holy Father wanted to draw attention to the fact that work is not simply about the material world. There's a spiritual dimension to it. And St. Paul, in many of his writings, stresses the necessity, the value of work, to avoid idleness or laziness, to educate the will. The Catechism tells us that work is a duty. If anyone will not work, let him not eat, quoting the words of St. Paul. And work can also have a redemptive nature to it, right? Because by enduring the hardships of work in union with Jesus, man collaborates in a certain fashion with the Son of God in his redemptive work on the cross. He shows himself to be a disciple of Christ by carrying the cross daily in the work he has called to accomplish, right, in your daily life. So we see that work can be a means of sanctification. St. John Bosco said that work is a powerful weapon against the enemies of the soul. St. Joseph has always been the patron of workers. Now, we don't know too much about St. Joseph. The Gospels don't record him saying anything, nor do we hear really many details about his life, especially after Christ begins his ministry. And that's why it's traditionally held that he died before then. Now, with this being said, there are many things that we could bring to light about St. Joseph just by looking at the Gospel narrative. Now, we know that St. Joseph was a carpenter, and he used this profession to support the Holy Family. So, of course, he was very diligent and hardworking in his work as a carpenter. But really much more important than this was the work of God, which he carried out so faithfully. We see amid all of the confusion and turmoil, from Mary being with child, to not finding any housing in Bethlehem for Mary, who was about to give birth, having to flee to Egypt in order to save the child Jesus from the wrath of King Herod. Despite all of these problems that came up, he remained faithful to his calling, to his duty. He humbly submitted himself to the will of God, which was to dedicate his entire life to protecting, supporting, and loving Mary and Jesus. So we see that St. Joseph faithfully cooperated in the work of redemption. What a great example for us in persevering in both physical and spiritual labors that we face on a daily basis. Now, sometimes we are tempted to disregard our duties in our life, whether it be obligations to our family or to God, and we want to follow our own inclinations. During these times, these difficult times, we should call upon Saint Joseph, who is the patron of the Universal Church, the patron of workers, to help us to choose the will of God and his work above all things. Let us ask the Blessed Virgin Mary and her chaste spouse, St. Joseph, especially during this year of St. Joseph, to assist us in sanctifying the work that we undertake in our lives, so that we can grow in virtue through our daily efforts, which are a participation, as we said earlier, in the redemptive work of Christ on the cross. And we ask Mary and St. Joseph for this special grace.